All right, and 5,
We can kind of see it.
4, 3, 2. What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the After 29 podcast. This is episode 5, Lockdown Over. I'm Vincent Dunstan, a.k.a. Minister V. Let's get it going.
Clayton Foster, big shoulder brother in the building.
How's your boom happy to be here?
Why you sound like you hoarse, bro? You over there choking on them skins, ain't you, bro? Them pork rinds. Go ahead, Terrell.
Terrell Pollock, a.k.a. T40.
All right, guys, let's talk to God. Eternal God, our Father, Lord, we come to you this Friday evening, Lord, to give your name honor, glory, and praise, Lord. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to assemble at this location, Lord, and to assemble safely in your name, Lord. Lord, we thank you for this podcast and just allowing us an avenue and a platform to talk about the things that are near and dear to our heart. Lord, we ask that you will continue to bless this podcast, bless this topic, and bless our brotherhood and our friendship. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, all right, let's get it going. So tonight we are discussing a topic. It's a serious topic, but at the same time, like, we're really going to dive into it. We're going to tackle some questions that, like, when other people talk about this topic, they leave out certain things. Like, even when we were even when we were discussing it on the phone, like, we kind of dove into some things that we normally don't think of when we think about brothers in prison. So just to give a little background, the topic Lockdown Over, we came up with that because the topic tonight is we're really discussing black men in the prison system, but not so much in the prison system. We want to focus on what happens when these brothers get out of prison, because sometimes we focus on like what happens inside the prison system, how they got there, unfair sentencing and things like that, but sometimes we omit talking about what happens after the fact. Because unless they're in there for like the long haul, Claude Banks and and Ray Gibson, unless they in there for life, these brothers get out. And I always ask it, like, when I see some of those posts, like, guys released after 44 years of prison, whether they were guilty or not, I always wonder, like, you've really been in prison all these years, whether it's 5 years or 50 years, the world changes very quickly, so we talk about, like, the adjustment after that, so we're gonna go ahead and dive in, but before we even do that, I want, because Mazio, this topic really touched Mazio, and he really wanted to discuss it, so I'm gonna let Mazio talk about like why he even chose why he chose this topic.
So the reason why I chose it, so it's funny, I was in church, and they were talking about how Jesus was up on the cross, and it had the two thieves or whatever, the one guy that actually went up to heaven with Jesus, another guy that pretty much was like laughing and just didn't care. So I guess it just made me think about, like, how he was given a second chance for just doing like something wrong or whatever. So I guess it made me think about that. Just saying like, hey, people in prison, they might have messed up or something like that, but they deserve a second chance, and that's pretty much what I thought about. So.
Right. So one of the other things that we're going to dive into as we start this segment is like you talked about people getting second chances, and one of the things that one of the first things that a brother's going to need when he gets out of jail now is a way to take care of himself, and that's a job. But we did a little research, and just from what we know all on our own, why is it so hard for people that when they after they are incarcerated and they get out, why is it so hard for brothers, to find jobs? If they pay their debt to society, and and we say that everyone deserves a second chance, but why is it still so hard for them to get on their feet and to prove that to everybody? Like, hey, I paid my dues. Like, let me prove that now. that is one of the main questions that they ask, and it does flag for the employers, like if they check yes. That now with some jobs, and depending on what the job is, that doesn't mean necessarily that the job is. Did we stop recording?
I just ripped it from the video.
Huh?
I just ripped it from the video.
Oh, okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person can't get hired.
Right.
But a lot of times what it does is it does allow the employer to scrutinize a little bit more, whether to consider to hire this person or not. And don't get me wrong, I do believe everyone deserves a second chance, and everyone deserves to come out and a way to provide for themselves. I mean, I've had family members, who have, done a bid, and, they came out, was able to find work. I mean, it was a struggle for them, but, they paid their debt to society, and, all they wanted to do was live a normal life now, and just stay out the way and just provide for themselves, give back. Be a productive member of society. That's really what they wanted. They didn't want anything else. Now, I ain't a fool, and I'm not saying that a job should be a fool. If somebody just did a bid for robbing a bank, and they did 10 years, I don't suggest a bank hire them for any position. So I do understand that there is a level of scrutiny that must be taken. But I also think at the same time, if we say people have paid their debt to society, then we must act accordingly with that, but we have to judge each situation on an individual basis, because we do know that there are some people who are repeaters. Right. They get out, they get homesick, they end up going back, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But speaking on,
one thing to answer the question, I think oftentimes it's hard for them to get a job, because I think when I was researching this topic, I was like, man, it was tough for me to kind of relate to like what we were talking about. So I was just thinking like who do I know who's because I ain't never been arrested or nothing, so I mean I can't really relate to life in prison. I don't really have a personal relationship with someone who was in prison, so it was kind of hard for me to relate to the topic. But I was thinking about like who do I know or what have I seen who has been in prison and made it out and was successful afterwards. And there's this guy named the Wall Street Trapper that I follow on Instagram and YouTube and all that. He was in jail for 10 years when he was convicted when he was 13 or 16 or something like that. And when he got out, he was studying stocks and everything and stock market when he was in jail. So I think oftentimes a lot of people who are in jail, prison, whatever, it's hard for them when they get out because they don't utilize the time that they had when they were in there to learn and grow and get skills that they don't really necessarily have to rely on being hired by someone. So I think that's one part that a lot of people who are inmates and things like that may not have the resources to get, or just don't know, or just don't have the information. And one thing that he said that like stuck out to me, he was saying that like when he was young, he said he was impoverished and he had a lack of information. That was the issue. Why and he loved the street life. He was like selling drugs, and he got locked up for attempted murder because somebody was trying to rob him because he was selling drugs or whatever, and he got locked up for attempted murder. And he said he loved the street life because he just wasn't informed. He had a lack of information. So I think that may be a big contributing factor to why they can't get jobs when they get out. Because I mean, if you're in there for 10 years, think about if you study something for 10 years and you didn't really have to worry about anything else. You should be almost an expert on that subject. So I think some people just don't know how to utilize that time that they have inside.
Right. So and with that, so like he found something to pretty much get him by when he got out. But I guess that's not always the case for everybody. I mean, some people take up, trades while they're, when they're in prison, or they go back to school to get their GEDs, or even, I don't know if they have like maybe college level courses in some prisons or whatever. I'm not sure, but not anymore. Okay.
Not anymore.
So, but one of the things we talked about and we asked was like, what type of programs are really like out there to like either help them find jobs or just, to assist with things that helps them turn their life around, now that they're on the outside. Now we know that they used to have like, get to work programs back in the day. I don't hear too much about things like that anymore. But what other things are out there, or do you think are out there now, or should be out there now to kind of help, felons, or I'm not even gonna say just felons, just previously incarcerated black men, get back on their feet?
I mean, I don't know a whole lot. I didn't pull like a whole lot of different ones. I don't know if it's a whole lot, but I mean, I saw one in particular. Is a guy here in North Carolina. He's in Winston-Salem, who started a program to help people inside and help their families when they're inside, so they can communicate with. So he set up a website where their families can send the people messages on electronically on the site, and then he works inside the prison so that the people that work for the prisons can retrieve the messages and print it out or whatever and give it to the inmates, so they have a line of communication. Because he was saying that mental health to him was one of the number one things that cause people to be repeat offenders and things like that. So he said that that helps with their mental health, and they know people care about them. So that's one part of it. And then the name of his program is called TikTok. And he said they put in place mentors and job placement and mental health. Like I said, he's right there in Winston-Salem. But that's a major one that I looked into. I saw a list of government programs too, but I didn't really look into them.
All right.
Yeah. When I tried looking, I guess for programs and whatnot, I guess the main thing that I kept running into was it was saying that I guess the programs are starting to become less and less now. I don't know if it's because of money or just. I'm not going to say they don't care, but I mean I don't know. So it seemed like money to me was probably the main factor why they're just not there's not more programs out here to help people that were incarcerated or whatnot. So
yeah, one of the things that I saw on that, that's why I said you don't see that a lot nowadays. I used to know about some programs like that,
right.
Especially when I used to live in New York. They had different things. I think nowadays, and this is only my opinion, it seems though, just from observation, that people don't care anymore.
Right.
Look, they got themselves in trouble. This is on them. Why should I pour money or donate money to a program that helps felons get back on their feet? And in some of their eyes, that they're just going to go back to prison anyway. Don't get me wrong. Right. There are some that are going to end up back in there, but it to me it seemed like people just stop caring to pour into those programs, so they do become hard to maintain. I always said that we all know that the prison system, especially on the backs of blacks, it's a multi-billion-dollar system. There's a lot of money that is made in the prison system, and that's poured into the prison system. Right. It's almost like a good investment to pour into a prison system. I would like to see the government do more for when while they're in there. Let it be true rehabilitation, and that's one of the things we don't see is true rehabilitation. And then even when they get out, do more to help them really get on their feet. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't pour but so much into these programs, because at the end of the day, I do get it. These are grown men and women, but we're talking about black men right now. But they are responsible for their actions. And don't get me wrong, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody does deserve a second chance. So they do deserve somewhat leniency, especially for those non-violent crimes. Murder, on the other hand, I mean, even the murderer deserves a second chance if and when they pay their due to society, based on the laws. And let's just say if 45 years was their prison sentence and they get out or whatever, even that person deserves a second chance. Right. If we are really going to truly live by what we say, but it's just really not a lot out there for people when they get out, whether it's a non-violent crime or more. There's already a stigma. There's that scarlet letter, on their chest, and you're chastised about that, in everyday life.
So do y'all think that's just a product of how in the U.S. how the prison system is just structured?
Yeah, because
you got to think about it. Not in North Carolina, but in certain states, the government contracts out the Department of Correction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's a private organization, private company, actually running the Department of Correction for the state, and they have quotas. They actually have quotas where they got to keep the facilities at a percentage filled.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and if not, they find the state.
So rehabilitation, like real rehabilitation of prisoners, is not profitable.
In some states, yes, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, because think about the labor that gets, think about all the labor that goes into the prison system and some of the things that, I mean, we all heard when we were kids, like, oh, that's where they make the license plates. They make so much more, and they do so much more on the backs of these prisoners. Now, don't get me wrong, it gives them structure and it gives them something to do while they're there versus just sleeping all day long and out in the yard. But at the same time, prisons are ran like businesses.
Yeah. And have you seen like how the prison system is ran in like in Europe? Matter of fact,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean the actual structure is like more different. Like that, but then here it's like you're in like a cave or whatever. They make you feel, I guess. For prisoners, I guess it makes them feel like an animal because I mean you have bars and it just you're surrounded by four walls. Yeah. But I mean I guess the system in Europe, in Europe or whatnot, I mean it's just they it seems like they care more about them in that country than over here in the States.
Like, I think like some of the like y'all talking about the jobs, some of them that are outsourced from the prison system. One is of course the license plates that we know of. Another one is all the street signs.
Yeah.
All of
the highway signs.
All of the highway signs, all the street signs are made.
Well, they make those down in Franklin County.
Yeah, they make those in Franklin County. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, tourism. You wouldn't think of it. If you call the hotline for a visit NC, you're actually talking to a female offender at Women's Correction.
Really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
So,
I mean, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some level of productiveness in the prison because that, first of all, that teaches that to me in my head, if it's done correctly, that gives them something to look forward to when they get out. They practice a skill, whether it be telecommunications, or some civil engineer, civil engineering work while they're inside. The point is they developed a skill. The problem comes in is when it's just cheap labor. They're not really learning any skills. They're just doing a monotonous job that they otherwise. As far as I know, there aren't too many companies that make street signs and things like that, as like a contract or anything like that with the states. That's all prison work, and things like that. So that's a skill you have that you'll never use unless you end up back in prison.
Right. Yeah. So and that kind of like mixes with what Mazur was talking about. I was looking at a prison in Norway. It's like Bastoy Island.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at that, and they it's like pretty much, it's not open, but like they still have prison guards and things like that. But it's a whole island where they have people like working in being butchers and working on a farm. It's like, and they just like a regular society, but it's just on the island. They're just isolated on the island. And these were prisoners who were like in maximum security prisons, and they were doing an experiment, like putting them on this island and just have them like living like a regular person, because they said when they get out, they want to know what it's like to be somebody's neighbor, or like how it is to get back into society, which I think may be a good thing, because oftentimes, like we was talking to Terrell, he was saying like when a lot of the guys get out, they don't know how to readjust to being back in the real world, and they go back in because that's what they're used to. The people in prison are their friends, their family, and that's what they're used to.
It's a way of life.
Yeah. And so they said they have them on Bastoy Island just doing stuff like they would when they're released, which makes sense in theory. I don't know. Well, the numbers that I saw, it actually is better, because like I was saying, like the re-entry rate, like people who go back to prison, is only 16%.
Right.
And I was looking at like different studies here in the U.S., like the re-entry rate for people over like a 9-year period was like 83%.
Right.
It's a huge difference.
That's pretty high.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Like I will say there are few in between jobs in North Carolina that do that. There's some. Like I say, it depends on your willingness to better yourself and to do the necessary things for it. Like if you're incarcerated, there are ways where you can get your custody level dropped to a certain level where they're actually contracted with like the different offices in the area that actually hire people while they're still incarcerated, and they get off of work. They actually go to work at these companies and actually make a wage, and actually they can. I think part of it, goes to their room and board for the prison, but then part of it, if they have restitution, goes to that, and then but if not, then it goes they pretty much saved. So when they get out, they have that money.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing I saw too. It was like I can't remember the YouTube channel. It was like this guy named Ali. He was like in his 40s or 50s or something like that. He said he'd been in and out of prison all his life, and he was saying that he didn't have no family. He said he got some cousins like in Louisiana. He was like in a prison in Texas or somewhere, but he said he didn't really have no family. He was like, the people here, that's my family. So he was always going back and forth and in and out of prison and stuff, and that's all he knew. He said when he got out of jail, they gave him like one pair of clothes and $50, and then he wasn't in Texas. He actually went to like a halfway house in Texas after he got out of jail, and all he had was $50 and just the clothes on his back. Like he ain't got nothing. Like what you gonna do with $50 and
eat for like maybe
one pair of clothes,
like 3 days maybe.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
And when he was on the bus, when he got off the bus in Texas, he lost his money. He didn't even know what he did with his money. He said he bought a cheeseburger and a pack of cigarettes or something he bought, and then he got on the bus to go to Texas. He lost the rest of the money he had.
Wow, that's crazy. So talking about when we talked about like when they get out and adjusting to that life. What mental effects do you think black men face adjusting to life outside of the prison? Outside of the prison system, because that is an actual adjustment that has to be made. Especially the longer you're in, the more the world has changed that you have no clue about. Like there were some people went into jail, and I mean just a 10-year span. And after 10 years, I mean, technology has changed, laws have changed, the way you go about doing simple things as far as like getting an ID or how you apply to jobs and things, different little things that we take for granted because, we're here for the adjustment or the change. So we just automatically adjust to it. These gentlemen went to prison and life was one way, and now that they're out another way. What mental effects does that have on a man after after he serves his time in prison?
I'm sure it's pretty heavy. Just like dealing with like mental health and like trying to keep up living out in the real world and not being in prison. You have to make adjustments all the time. But one thing that I saw in that same video that I was talking about, it was a guy. He's a minister, and he used to be, he was a former prisoner as well. He was saying that they go from like people always telling them what they have to do. They got to make like 5 decisions. He said they're like children inside, and then they go from that to having to be an adult. And he said when they're inside, you got to make 5 decisions a day. And he said you go from that to having to make 5 decisions every minute.
Right.
So he says it's a huge adjustment because you're pretty much a child because they're telling you what to do, when to eat, whatever you need to do that day. They're telling you, and then you got to make decisions for yourself when you get out. So I'm pretty sure that's a heavy burden to carry when you've adjusted to life for years in a certain way. So.
Right.
And it's funny. It's not funny about the topic, but I was saying it's funny that you mentioned it because it makes me think about 3 different movies. Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if y'all saw that.
Yeah.
So the old white guy that was he got out of prison and he was scared of going leaving out because it's pretty much what you were saying. Like he's going out to he's pretty much getting his freedom. He doesn't know how to act. So he had a job at the grocery store or whatever, and I guess it was so much like for him he couldn't know how to live.
Yeah.
Being free. So he committed suicide. Another example was Life. When they got old and they got out of prison, and Martin was like looking at how the world like changed or whatnot. So yeah, I definitely agree with Clayton.
Or just even in that same movie, the guy
that was going to get out.
That was going to get out and got gay.
Yeah, Miguel.
And he ran.
The fact that he was getting ready to get out, he was like, I can't go home to my family this, because he pretty much he became a new person based on the lifestyle that he was living, and not just talking about his sexual preference, but just the overall lifestyle of being in prison. That was a life that he accustomed to. He knew what to expect every day. He already knew what it was. Now I'm pretty sure everyone in jail is probably thinking like, I want to get out, but then when the reality sets in, like, yeah, you really are getting out, you really have to think about, okay, when I get out, now what? And I think one of the things that I did read on, and this was some years ago, that now that I remember, that there's a huge suicide rate for people who have gotten out of prison, especially I think once they were in like 10 years or more, the suicide rate increased like exponentially, just because they don't know what they're getting out to. Right. They don't know what to expect. Yes, I want to be out of prison because, I mean, who really wants to be locked up? But in all reality, when I get out, what am I going to do with my life? Right. What if my family doesn't, they won't accept me. They won't help me. Right. I'm pretty much on my own. At least here in prison, I had 3 meals. I had health care. I had a lot of different things. So.
And what I was going to say to that is that, I mean, I can't even imagine the pressure and the stress that, a person that's getting out of jail has, because, I mean, especially for being a black man, I mean, we ourselves, I mean, have a lot of stress on us, but then for them to get out of prison or whatnot, what if, like you said, they're trying to get a job and they're actually trying to change their lives or whatnot, and the pressures of the world, people are judging them and not trying to help them out or whatever. I mean, yeah, I definitely can understand why the suicide rate for that is extremely high for that. So, just came in.
We call it being institutionalized.
Yeah, I mean, because you're going from a familiar world, like your whole world is different. Like it's like being on a foreign planet. Especially like if you went in pretty young. And now you're getting out. You probably went in when you was like 19, maybe 20, and now you're getting out of prison at like 30, 40, 50 years old. You've missed those developmental years as an adult to adjust to life, and now you're getting out at 40, 50 years old. You're already feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to function in this world. I spent the better part of my adult years in this prison system, so that's all I know. And there is a huge pressure when you have to face a whole new world, especially now if you're young, if you're still really young when you get out, I would surmise that it's probably a little bit more adjustable, but at a certain age it becomes a lot more difficult, because we already know for men who've never been to prison that if you try to take on certain changes in life at a later age, 40, 50, 60, that's already hard enough when you're familiar with what's going on in the world. Now just think about adding a 40, 50, 60 year old male who's been in prison majority of his adult life, and now he has to come out and make a life. He's completely clueless. Right. Now, I mean, unless he has like the familiar backing, and the support that's going to help him out, a lot of them come out and just like, I might as well either be back in prison or dead. Yeah. And and a lot of them don't really want to commit another crime. They've served their time. They don't want to do anything wrong anymore, so they kill themselves. Yeah. To them that was the best avenue. For them, and that really plagues their mental state. And another thing, so as we move along a little bit more, we did talk about, we're talking about their mental state, but we also talk about that while you're in prison, you're afforded a lot of, I want to use the word very carefully, but you're afforded a lot of benefits, yes. You're afforded a lot of. I want to be careful. But you're afforded a lot of benefits that you in prison. That if that same person got out, they have no access to. They can't afford it.
Yeah, Jerome mentioned that when we were talking about it. He was saying that, like,
a lot of them when they get out, if they even qualify for it, they might get Medicare. Or something like that, but most of them don't have health insurance.
But talk about what they receive when they're in there.
Oh, but when they in there, they get you got to think about it. Like kids in school don't even get this stuff. Like they get free meals a day, 3 hot meals a day, or 3 good meals a day. I would say that. Then all of their health care is pretty much covered. They may or not have a $5 copay on something, but if they actually find that it's something that they couldn't control, or not if they couldn't control, but if they find it like they were being frivolous with it, then they might charge them $5 for a copay. If not, they don't charge them anything. All the surgeries, if you have medical issues, the state has, it's by law, the state has to do everything to keep you alive. So
because you're in their care.
So that means if the doctor says, oh, you need a hip replacement or you need a heart surgery, whereas us, we're scrambling around trying to figure out how we're gonna pay for it. Yeah. These $50,000-$100,000 surgeries, theirs is taken care of like off the bat. Right. So a lot of the like the prisons, and one of the things that was actually in the news not too long ago was that some of the hospitals in the area actually charge the state more for like inmates and that are
because they know it's automatically be paid.
Well, for one, they get a blank check anyway, because it's coming from the state.
Yeah, they know that the state's going to pay it.
So
they might charge more than they would somebody else.
So we pay it.
Yeah.
So I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's wrong because they really are in your care at this point. So it is your job to take care of that. But I'm not hating on the prisoners. Like if it's there, use it or take advantage of it. I mean, hell, I would too if I was in that situation. But my question is why, why is there not a lot more of outpatient facilities for men when they get out of prison? Like why doesn't that same help and that same check, that same blank check that the government will write while they're in prison, why doesn't some of that follow them after they get out? Because I have heard stories of they, like you said, like they were taken care of when they were in there. They got medication, surgeries, help. They even talk to therapists. A lot of times they have therapists on site at the prisons, but as soon as they get out, they're on their own.
I like one of the things that I've seen, like personally, I've seen a few times is cancer treatment. People are receiving cancer treatment while they're incarcerated. They get out. They don't have that availability to them because it's on them. So what would you do if you got cancer? And I know if I go out here and rob a store, you can send me right back to prison. They got to pay for it,
and I can get my treatment.
But what was I gonna say? A lot of like another one thing that kind of, when I talk about like this, the state has a duty to keep you alive. One of the things that we see a lot of is how many times you've seen your family members go and they've been put on life support, and they say, okay, we can only keep you on here for 3 days. Just to keep. The state doesn't have that. You will stay on life support until your body literally stops.
So
yes.
Right. Wow.
Until your family actually comes up. If your family comes up there and says, "There's, we're gonna take them off life support," the state will keep you on. I've seen people stay on life support for weeks before they actually, their body just.
So it's almost like there's an incentive.
Yeah.
But so when we were talking about like rehabilitation, why is this such a huge stumbling block to be rehabilitated in prison so that you are more productive when you get out? Why? And I guess we can only speak on this country because we seem to be the one that gets this wrong the most. Why is that? Why is that not a priority? The rehabilitation. Let's keep them out of here.
I would say they pretty much leave it up to the individuals to make a plan for themselves. Okay, what is your goals? What are your plans? How do you plan to achieve these goals to stay out of prison? Some of them, they're wholeheartedly, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go back to tattooing, or I'm gonna go, work in construction. I'm gonna go do this, and they have that family support behind them. Hey, when you get out, you can stay with me until you get on your feet.
Right.
Some of them don't have that support.
Right.
And they know they don't have that support. So when it gets close to their due date or their expiration date as far as their sentences, they're like, I don't know what I'm about to do. And they don't make the necessary steps prior to getting their release date. Everybody knows if you're in prison, your release date, your number, and your release date. So if your release date is coming up, some of them actually try to make themselves better while they're in there, like you said. But others, they're just sitting there and they want to play with the gangs, join the gangs inside the facilities, do other things other than make themselves better. So
yeah, and my thing on that is I don't think that we should leave it on the individual to decide how to rehabilitate themselves. One, not to be condescending, but if they had that type of discern and making decisions, they probably wouldn't be in there to start with. So clearly, they need a little help. And I'm not putting the prisoner down, but clearly they didn't make the best decisions, or else they wouldn't be in this predicament that they're in. I do think it would be more beneficial to have someone else who actually truly cared about, offering some other options and some different avenues on rehabilitation, whether it be mental, physically, financially, whatever the case is. But I don't think it should be left up to now maybe somebody who something simple or whatever. Okay, maybe these individuals can, figure out how to rehabilitate themselves. But there are many others, like, this is a behavior, this is a pattern, this just so happened to be the time they got caught. I don't think we should necessarily leave it up to them to do that. I mean, I think they should play a part in that. Everyone should play a part in their own growth and development, but I don't think that they should be the ones spearheading that.
Because every offender is given a case manager that's supposed to help them figure out that stuff. But a lot of times it's more or less the case managers are trying to put them in a job that fits the prison. So it's like, oh, he might have been a barber on the outside, but I need people in the kitchen, so I'm gonna put you in the kitchen.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just like whatever fits them, but it's not like against you. I think it's like the kitchen is like their starting point for the jobs. So eventually, if you act well in the kitchen, do well in the kitchen, then they'll move you up to other jobs. But it's like I said, it's kind of like they have to, even though they have case managers, they have to still take it upon themselves to try to make them to find something for them to do.
Right.
Most of the time, because I work in maximum security, so most of them, their goal is to make it to medium custody. Medium custody is a little bit more lenient. They get more freedoms, and that kind of thing. But like some of them just want to stay in maximum security. They're afraid to go to other things. But if you, like I said, like I was saying before, if you work your way down the custody level, maximum, medium, minimum. If you get to minimum level on minimum, you can go work at some of these doctors' offices and work in receptions, or you can work at Burger King in the back, or they have jobs outside of the prison for them to work, but some of them don't want to.
So if those that you mentioned that want to stay in maximum security, like what's behind that ideology? Why would they want to stay in maximum security?
The thing about some people they're afraid to be around other people. Maximum security means you got your own room. That's your spot. That's your place. You got your friends. You go see your buddies while you're there. But medium custody is probably more like a barracks or like a military bunk style. You might have like a case at the bottom of that where you keep your stuff in.
A foot locker.
Yeah. So you might have a foot locker with your stuff, and you got your padlock for it. And some of them don't want that setup.
Right.
So do you think? Because I mean, things that I've seen over the years is kind of grazing by people who are in and out of the prison system. Is they say a lot of it is due to like antisocial behavior. Right. So do you think maximum security reinforces that antisocial behavior that furthers the cycle?
I've seen people that go from maximum security make it and don't come back. They have the plan. They have, hey, I'm gonna go do this so that I can get out. But then I've seen a lot of them where more than not come in, more come back, because they just have that mental, like, hey, this is what I'm used to doing. I can wake up at 6 a.m. Somebody wakes me up at 6 a.m. I go to breakfast. I go to nurse, get my meds. I don't have to work for myself. Everything is pretty much done for me. I just gotta follow the rules. Right. So that sociology of that mindset is they're not used to it. They get accustomed to it, especially if you're there for 10, 15 years. Yeah. It's kind of hard to break that cycle if you don't have somebody to help you. Like You can get all the help on the inside, but it's the outside help that has to happen.
Right.
Because if you got somebody on the outside to say, "Hey, I got your back," whenever you get out, you're good. I mean, most of the time, those are the individuals I don't see come back.
Right.
Because they have a plan and they have family that's going to keep them from coming.
Yeah.
I guess it's like kind of like a like a job. You have a manager that shows that he cares about his employees, that his employees is not a number. And when people that work for him, they see how they're treated, and it's like, oh, this person actually cares about my well-being. Then they're willing to actually try to do the work and give it 100% or whatever. But then if you have someone that doesn't care, they're gonna have an I don't care attitude either. So, or as well, I should say. But
yeah, definitely. So do y'all think that a lot of these reasons that we just talked about, like the lack of rehabilitation and things like that, do you think a lot of these reasons contribute to why a lot of men just can't seem to stay out of the prison system, after they've even served their full sentence? Why isn't there like more of an incentive of staying out? Why is it so attractive that I'm gonna just end up right back in here anyway?
I guess just their comfort zone or whatever. I mean, they feel comfortable being in prison, and they feel like they're more loved being there than out here. Because I mean, like we all said that there's not that many programs that actually care about people that were incarcerated or whatnot. So why should I be in a system that doesn't care about me? It doesn't do anything for me, so I might as well just go back to a system that actually works or whatever. So I mean, that's probably what their mindset is.
It's like sometimes when they're done with their sentence, and once they're done with their sentence, they have nowhere else to go. They might go halfway house for a little while, but they end up homeless. I actually had an incident that happened while I was coming into work. Guy actually walked up to the front door in the prison and asked could he stay here because he was homeless, not because he committed a crime. He just needed somewhere to sleep.
Yeah.
And we was like, no, that's not how this works. We don't just give you a bed here.
Right.
So that kind of, and then with the a lot of the things that I've seen lately happen is an influx of mental health, and that goes along with government funding for mental health facilities. That's been going down, and so now you're having correctional officers who are not trained in mental health, more or less. I went through that little training. Not familiar with recognizing mental health issues and dealing with people with more mental health issues than you really would normally. It's a thing where you see more mental health people coming in because they don't have mental health facilities on the outside for them.
Right.
They get discharged from mental health facilities, and then they don't have the resources for their medications that they're supposed to be on. So they end up doing something to themselves or to other people, or just robbing or whatever to get locked up. And then they have psychologists and psychiatrists that come there to put them back on their medication.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean that what y'all touched on is kind of what I was gonna say. I think it's like multiple things that contribute to it. Is I think one, the system's kind of lacking, and then I think the beginning piece of it is just like when I was telling you about the Wall Street Trapper guy. We just don't have the information. It's like how he grew up like in love with the streets, because that your potential actions, what you're going to do is going to land you there. You already know that, but you don't have information for a better way. So I think it's not only a issue when they're on the inside. I think there's issues that need to be taken care of before they even get there. In more impoverished places, like people don't grow up without with lack of money. They're gonna try to do something to get it, whether that's robbing or doing some kind of illegal activities, and that's gonna land you. So I think our whole society is issues
One of
in
the
and out.
things, last thing I could say is y'all don't know this, but my uncle, my dad's brother, was actually incarcerated for years, and he got out, and he's doing exceptionally well for himself. He's probably running He's doing more like construction.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think he's in Florida and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And he was in prison for like 10, 15 years. So I seen like he had his wife stay by him while he was incarcerated and helped him out even when he got out, and supported him. And then he ended up getting jobs and finding and moving up the ladder in different like oil companies and stuff in Texas. And then next thing you know, boom, he gets. So it can happen. Yeah. I've seen it happen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm trying to think. A question I was gonna ask Terrell. So I know like some people go to jail for marijuana or whatnot, a marijuana charge or whatever. Do you feel like, I guess, if they made that legal, they legalized that in every state, that might like bring down the numbers for like African American males?
It might bring down it just depends on the jobs. There's a lot of people that's incarcerated for drug possessions. It just depends. They have that 3-strike law. You get 3 felonies. You pretty much in for life. So it's just like you see people in there for these extended periods of not for violent crimes, but just because they like to get high on marijuana. I mean, you got some people that were distributing cocaine and stuff like that. Yeah, I see why you got those jobs, but you're legalizing marijuana, and you got all these people that's incarcerated for just marijuana charges. But now you have a multi-billion-dollar industry now of growers and all this other stuff that you pretty much locked up a lot of black men over the years for that same drug.
You lock them up for something now that you've turned into a business.
Yes.
So I wonder if that did happen, what would happen to the people that actually went to jail for that? I guess.
Well, that's being played out right now in the court system anyway,
really?
And all the way up to the Supreme Court. My take on that is, if an individual, and I'm no lawyer, but this is just my take on it. If an individual, let's just say if North Carolina decided to legalize marijuana today, I think if it's okay to make it legal now, everyone who was incarcerated, arrested here in the state of North Carolina for that charge should be released. If that's the only thing they were incarcerated for. You can't tell me, it wasn't legal then, so you should stay in. My thing is, the moment it becomes legal, my debts are paid, because why am I still in prison for something that everyone else gets to do freely now? Because now you get to, now you get to make money off of it. And I'll say this, and then I'm done with it, because this is strictly opinionated. Everything is always illegal until a white man can make money off of it. So it doesn't matter until rich white men can make money off of it. That's why even back in the day, alcohol was illegal, because you just had local individuals, moonshiners and things like that, that can make money off of. Rich white men couldn't make money off of, because there were no major distilleries like that. Everything was really local. There was no major distributors of alcohol then. That's why we had prohibition. And then soon as rich white men learned how to make money off it, all of a sudden it became legal. It's the same thing now. I believe one day crack cocaine may be legal at some point in time, when they learn how to cut out the poorer man, the black man, or whatever, or the lower income people from it, and rich white men can learn how to do it legally. It will become.
I don't know if they're gonna make crack legal.
And I may be exaggerating when I say that, but overall, it does seem to follow that trend. It's illegal until a rich white man can capitalize on it. That's all I got.
Yes, so far.
Anybody else?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, it's been a very interesting topic, and it's definitely one we're going to touch on again, because there's so many things that we really need to address with this, especially as black men. Whether you've been to prison or not, it affects you, because at the way this country is going, it could be us at any given time, whether you've committed a crime or not. Because just because of the color of our skin, we are presumed guilty anyway. For whatever. So we will definitely follow up with this topic, and there's definitely a lot more to discuss here. All right, guys, it's been another episode of the After 29 podcast. Until next time, peace.
Peace.